Okay, morning everybody. Today's Tuesday, Asara BiTeves. So we're going to talk about Asara BiTeves. I don't know why I'm obsessing about this. I'm all chaptzachon, I'm mishagas.
What are you obsessing about?
Ezra Sefer.
Oh, yeah?
One of the reasons we fast Asara BiTeves is because of Ezra Sefer.
What happens in it?
He died. His yard site is Teves. I'm going to read from inside the Slichas. I once did this. I once read the Slichas with you. You see, today in the Lubavitch you can't say page numbers anymore because you have so many different pages. If you'll give me your siddur, I'll try which page. So the way Slichas, of course, works is that the Rebbe writes that Slichas could be said as a tefillah by itself. Slichas could be said as part of davening. And there's differences in the way the nusach plays out, whether you say it as a part of davening or you say it by itself. But the way we do it is, just the slichas of the four Rosh Hashanah we say as a tefillah b'fnei atzmei. The other slichas we say, including Shem Vidai, we say as part of davening. So there's a lot of standard paragraphs that you say by all the slichas. And then you have the pizmoinim, you have the paragraphs that are distinct to each one of the tzeimis, each one of the fasts. So in Asara BiTeves, the first one is Eskira. You see, Eskira, Motzei, Kasher, Kra'ani, B'sholosh, Makes, B'cheidesh, Hazeh, Hikani. You see? Eskira means I will remember. Motzek. Motzek means the oppression, the calamity that occurred, that happened to me. B'sholosh, Makes, B'cheidesh, Hazeh, Hikani. I was hit with 3 Makes in this month. What are they? So the first one is, if you can skip a line, the achani b'shmoina boy. You see that? On the 8th day we were squeezed, crushed. Smallest v'yamonis left and right, which is the inyan of Targum Shivim. The idea. So the first one is Ches. Ches Teves is the date that they translated the Torah into Yavonis, into Greek, which is a story that happened in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, the beginning of the second Beis HaMikdash, relatively speaking, in Mitzrayim. Okay? Then it says, Zoyamti betisha. It's about 5 lines into the paragraph. You see? Can you see those words? Zoyamti betisha. Zoyamti means I was affected with the Eibishter's anger on the 9th day, Bechlima v'chefer, which means shame. Because chosach me'alai, it was taken away from me, me'il hoid v'tzefer, a me'il, a tunic of beauty and tzefer. Hoid, how do you translate in English? Glory and diadem. I have no idea what diadem means. Why? Because Toref Teiref Bey, on that day was taken from us, Hanoisein Imrei Shefer, who gives the words that are beautiful, who Ezra Sefer, you see? And then it says Yom Asiri is about the Motzei and Yerushalayim. I'm just showing you these words. So Asara BiTeves, we can't fast 3 days in a row, right? Even Yom Kippur, you don't fast 2 days in a row because the person can't fast. Even Tisha B'Av, you don't fast 2 days. But so Asara BiTeves, you fast 1 day for 3 things that happened. Ches, Tes, and Yud. Targum Shivim. Yesterday in yeshivas, Rabbi Yossi asked me, why are you fasting Targum Shivim? It didn't work out so bad that the Torah was translated into Yavanis. The Rebbe has a sikh in the Kutasichas where he says that Targum Shivim was kiyem shenasa ha'egel, like the day in which the egel was made. He doesn't say kasiyas ha'egel, like the making of the egel, kiyem shenasa ha'egel, like the day in which the egel was made. Why? Because when the egel was made, we didn't know yet if it would be a good thing or a bad thing. It could have been a good thing. If it would be like a kruv, like kruvim, then it would be a good thing. But then L'Poila became an egel, and Avodah Zarah became a bad thing. So Yom Shnas Egel means a day where you're not yet sure how it's going to be. So that's already not good. So that's the Targum Shivim is Kiyem Shnas Egel. It's not yet bad, but it could bring to very bad. Yeah.
You said Mitzrayim?
In Egypt, Talmai HaMelech. The Alexander's Mugden conquered the whole world. And he Hellenized the whole world. He brought Chochmas Yom into the whole world. Alexander's Mugden, I've said this before, is probably the most successful man in the history of the world. He had help. You know, the guy, Shimon HaTzadik, you heard of Shimon HaTzadik. Shimon HaTzadik supported him. It's like a mother. Shimon HaTzadik davened for Alexander's success. Alexander bowed down to him when he saw him because Shimon HaTzadik davened for success. Shimon HaTzadik preferred Yavam to Avodah Zarah. He was secular, a Hellenist. He conquered the whole world. And he died at 32 years old. And his kingdom was divided, I think, into 4. It's written in Svarim.
What did you just say?
His kingdom was divided into 4. And of those 4, 3 took turns dominating the Yidden. In the beginning of Zman Bayesheni, the Yidden were dominated by Yavon of Mitzrayim. The kings were all called Tolmai. Just like in the ancient world they were called Parei, so in that they were called Tolmai. The middle were dominated by Antiochia, by the Syrian Greeks. And the end we were dominated by Rome, you understand? All 3 of these kingdoms are really Yavon. They're Greece in their culture, in their Shita. So hundreds of years Yidden lived in Mitzrayim under Ptolemaic kings. The end was that they were all killed, unfortunately. In Alexandria, Mitzrayim, there was a huge Jewish community and so on and so forth. And one of the things that happened is one of the kings of Talmud, it seems like it happened more than once, forced the Jews to translate the Torah into Greek. It's called the Septuagint. Took 70 Chacham and put them in 70 different rooms and had them targum so they couldn't communicate with each other. And they all made the same corrections. They all changed the Torah. The Gemara says a bunch of examples.
Probably.
The Torah, the Chumash. They all made the same modifications. There was a big mess. So that day is Kiyem Shtatzav Hegel. It could have been terrible. We fast, Asara BiTeves, one of the reasons because of the Targum Shir. But I want to talk about Ezra Sefer. That's what I'm sort of stuck on. Ezra, a lot of tzaddikim have passed away. Punkt by Ezra Sefer, we fast. Yeah, we fast, same Gedalia. Gedalia was murdered, we fast. And Nechama Posh Tekashe. Yeshaya HaNavi was no smaller Navi than Gedalia, I would agree, yeah? Yeshaya was also murdered. Zechariah HaNavi was murdered. We don't fast for Zechariah HaNavi. The truth is Zechariah HaNavi was killed on Yom Kippur. So we're fasting anyway. He was a Kain Gamelech, Navi V'Kain. He was a Kain Gadol. So what's up with Gedalia? So when you get into Gedalia, the explanation is we fast in Gedalia because you're not just fasting because Gedalia was killed. Because after Gedalia was killed, the Jews had to leave Eretz Yisrael and they went, guess where? To the same Mitzrayim. They went to Egypt. This is much earlier. Because they thought they could outsmart the Babylonians. The Nebuchadnezzar, it all blew up in their faces. And when the Yidden left Eretz Yisrael, the Ruach HaKodesh left. The Ruach HaKodesh, which rested in Zman Bayesheni, went away. You know Jews. When they came back as Zman Bayesheni, it did not come back. So saying Gedalia is not just the death of a person. It changed Yiddishkeit completely. Yiddishkeit became a new religion because of the murder of Gedalia. Until then, there was Ruach HaKodesh, there was Nevuah, and afterwards it's all very, very uncommon. But why are we fasting Ezra Sefer? Why are we fasting Ezra Sefer? Well, a lot of people fast away. He wasn't even killed. Of course, I do not know the answer. I don't know the answer. But I've been obsessing over Ezra Sefer for the last few days. I don't know myself why. But everybody has hang-ups. I'm stuck on this. I'll get over it soon. Why do we make such a big deal? Ezra Sefer, the Yartzeit, we fast. Test Teves, the Yartzeit of Ezra Sefer, we fast. And of course, the beginning of again, I'm not saying I know anything. I'm just sharing with you thoughts. Ezra Sefer was one of the most important Jews in history.
He saved Jewry.
He literally saved Jewry. I've told this to you before, not that you brought this up. I discussed it with my boys in Yeshiva. If you made a list of the 5 most important Jews in history, the 5 most important in all history, so you have to put on the list the first and the last, Moshe and Mashiach. So you're left with 3. Who's going to be the 3 most important Yidden? So you can ask different people different things. My list, and you can disagree. Gesundheit is Ezra Sefer, Rabbi Akiva, and the Rambam.
Whoa.
Rabbi Akiva, as you said about Ezra, saved the Torah. The Torah was dying out. Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim all died on him after he taught them Kol HaTorah Kula. So he collected 5 more and he taught them Torah again and saved Torah. Ezra Sefer was the same kind of a man. Because Ezra Sefer did many things. First of all, he was one of the Seferim. That means he closed the Teresh B'Ksav. Second of all, he was an Anshkas Sagedela that formulated Teresh B'Peh. Third of all, he schlepped Yidden from Chutz La'aretz to Yisrael. He brought Yidden back. And when he brought Yidden back, the way he brought the Yidden back and who he brought the Yidden was such a complicated thing. He left the Miyuchasim in Babel. And he took the Isa, it's called in the Gemara. He took the vinaigrette. All the Yidden whose Yichus was confused and didn't know who they were, he took with him. And the Tanakh describes how in the middle of his trip, he suddenly realized that he's surrounded by a bunch of mamzerim, aber kipshute mamzerim, goyim, with all kinds of situations, and he became very, very broken. And he says, I'm not moving until we all figure out who we are and where we come from. And he was miyachas klal yisrael. He did the issue of me, hu, Yehudi, b'poyel mamish on the ground. Then he built the Beis HaMikdash. Ezra built the Beis HaMikdash. Nehemiah built the city of Yerushalayim. But Ezra built the Beis HaMikdash, yeah? And Ezra Sefer is laying in Baghdad. Now, I looked it up a little bit, and according to Yosifun, Ezra Sefer lived a very, very long life and passed away in Yerushalayim. But there's a strong tradition that he passed away in Bavel. And I'm going in that way. Oh, but of course it's unsure. Ezra Sefer is a Chutz La'aretz. What's he doing in Baghdad? He left the best Jews. The Gemara says, Kol ha'aratzos Isa Eretz Yisrael, Isa L'Bavel. If the whole world, the Yidden's Yichus, is unsure, Eretz Yisrael is good. If Eretz Yisrael's Yidden are not so good, Bavel, the best Jews, stayed in Bavel. They didn't push them to come up and buy a shady. Ezra went to get them. After he built the Beis HaMikdash and all the other things, he went to Bavel to bring them back. And he died.
He said he left the best Jews. Where did he leave the best Jews?
In Bavel.
And then he went back.
When I say best, I mean specifically about Yichus. They were Miyuchasim. They knew who their father was. And
why? Why did he do that?
Because he wanted to fix the assimilation problem that happened.
He left them over there.
So he took the problems with him. So he could fix them.
Did he do with Ruach HaKodesh?
It looks that way. I mean, the psukim, they had to, I forgot the psukim. The whole, in Sefer Ezra, they tell the story. He asked people to bring Shtari Yuchsin, but I think it was also Ruach HaKodesh. By Mashiach, it says for sure that Mashiach is going to be Miyachas Yid with Ruach HaKodesh. Ezra's a Kohen Gadol. Ezra was a Kohen. Yeah, Ezra was a Kohen. Second Beis HaMikdash. Yeah, the beginning. He built the second Beis HaMikdash. So this was a man, This was a man, because it was one of the many things that Ezra did was the Chazal say that at the end of Bayis Rishon, between Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni, there were a group of people who got together and they changed Yiddishkeit. They changed Yiddishkeit so that Yiddishkeit should survive. Not Chas v'Shalom, they changed Yiddishkeit because they were Nispol from El Mazed, they worried about modernness. They changed Yiddishkeit to save it. Until then, the most important thing in Yiddishkeit was Nevuah, Ruach HaKodesh, spirituality. And after them, the most important thing in Yiddishkeit is Torah, Limud, Sech, to learn and understand. How did they do it? So the first thing they did was they closed the Tanakh. They sealed the Tanakh, no more Tanakh. Chavdalit Sfarim and no more. They knew, b'Meseda. They're called the Seferim. The Gemara says, Lama Nikra Shmom Seferim. Why would they call Seferim? Seferim is Yeseha Shel Teira. They counted the letters of the Teira, the whole Tanakh. Ezra Sefer was one of them, one of the leaders of the Seferim. When they finished counting the Eishes HaTeira and closing the Tanakh, that there's not going to be any more Sfarim, and they announced what's inside and what's outside, they put on a different hat, and they became the Anshkas Sagdelu. There was 120 of them. The Anshkas Sagdelu organized Teresh B'Alpeh. And the big thing at Anshkas Sagdelu, they made halachas binding. See, until then, you went to a Rav, you asked him a shayla, he paskened from how he interpreted the Tanakh.
So
every Rav, went to a Rav, it's man by Yisrish. Yeah, my father told me, as the Rebbe said once, that in the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, they used the Chumash like a Shulchan Aruch. I don't know how you do that. They used the Chumash. You get to a Rav, you had a shayla, yeah? Kosher or treif. The Rav opened up Sefer Teira and looked inside and said, "Do you learn the pasuk like this? Do you learn the pasuk like this? The pshat is kach kosher." So there was no the halachas. The mitzvahs were a meseda, But the specific halachas, every generation that Rabbanim paskin based on that they interpret the psukim. The Anshe Kasagidel said no more. When you sit with a bezdin and you paskin a halacha, that halacha is binding. It doesn't mean it can't be changed. But it means that in order to change it, you have to make an effort. You can't just say I disagree. You have to have a bezdin which is godel b'chochmo b'minyan, greater in kamos and echos, in quantity and in quality, in the original bezdin, to overturn halacha of an generation. Otherwise, the halachas remain the same. This is all the Anshe Kasagdela. The Anshe Kasagdela did this. The whole Mishnah Gemara, the idea we have dinah, that you don't just say, okay, what's the halacha? Look in the Chumash. What's the halacha? Look what Hillel said. What Bishamai said. This is the Anshe Kasagdela. They said that the halachas of the Chachamim of the earlier generations are binding on later generations unless they can be overturned by a Sanhedrin that's godly b'chacham b'minyan. That's what happened. They did this, and they made the center of Jewish life. They made the center of Jewish life Torah. The yeshiva became more important than the Beis Hamikdash at that time. You understand? Now, of course, the end of that story, the tragic end of that story, was that the last of them was Shimon HaTzadik. As long as Shimon HaTzadik was alive, nobody would criticize. When Shimon HaTzadik passed away, they began to attack his Talmud, Antigonus.
Who was the Talmud?
Antigonus Ish Soicha in the Pirkei Avos was attacked by Tzaddik Ubaitas, and they said, "Who do these people all think they are?" They changed the whole religion. They attacked changed the whole religion. It wasn't that there was no nevuah. Nevuah became a tofel. It wasn't important. Having Ruach HaKodesh was not a goal. Being a Talmud Chacham became the goal. So they decided they want to go back to what it was. And this is the Tztukim. And the Tztukim became the Christians. That's the story.
Whoa.
The whole Shita is predicated, an idea that we gave up Ruchnius, you understand? We gave up spirituality and we replaced it with limud, with iyan, with scholarship, with academics. Why did they do it? Because the Ruach HaKodesh was leaving. They saw the Ruach HaKodesh, there was still some Nevi'im around, but they saw the Ruach HaKodesh was going away. And if Chas v'Sholom, Yidden would hold on to a religion of spirituality, without a real Ruach HaKodesh, Yiddishkeit would completely fall to pieces. So they held us for the last 2,500 years with Torah, with Gemara, Poshut Kipshut. And the irony is, the weird thing about it is, along comes Kabbalah and Hasidus, and it's trying to go the other way. That's why the Misnagdim are against it. You understand? The Hasidus is going back to, it's a taste of when Mashiach comes. But the taste of Mashiach comes is what they had in Zman Bayis Rishon, that the most important thing in Yiddishkeit is the Ruach, is the Spirit, is the Elokus, not the Seichel. You see, this is the story this is the history of the Jewish people going full circle. Ezra Sefer was at the center of this. At the center of this. It was at the center of this entire, I haven't used the word, I'll use it now, and God should forgive me, Reformation. This is Reformation. Real Reformation. Not Reformation that's based on what the Goyim say and what Goyishkeit says. Reformation that's based on what the Mishnah says, based on the Pasuk, Eis, Lasas, Lashem, Mefer, Teresecha. There was never an occasion in our history that Chachamim took it upon themselves to change the way Yidden lived more radically than the Seifrim and the Anshe Kassadeh. There's nothing even close. They changed the very nature of the Jewish people. The nature of the Jewish people. And we became Chachamim. Not that we were not Chachamim before, but Chacham was Tafel. And now the Yeshiva Yavne, V'Chachameha, Rabbi Yochanan Mezakai was more important than the Beis HaMikdash, in a way. That's how much a change it was. This is Alt Ezra Sefer. So, we fast on Ezra Sefer's Yartzeit. Yesterday was Ezra Sefer's Yartzeit. And I mentioned it in class. You cannot fast 3 days in a row, so we fast today. Why? Why? So first of all, you get a sense of who was Ezra Sefer? He's so important to the Jewish people. He is so important to the Jewish people, you have no idea. I'm just going to tell you Darach Hagav. Yeah, there was a Yid whose name was Rabbi Yossi ben Azariah. It was Ben Azariah. Remember the story with Rabbi Gamliel that they made him the Nasi? It was Ben Azariah was also a Kohen. And he was Asiri Eliezer, the Gemara says. He was 10 generations from Ezra Sefer. The Chachamim was saying, when they demoted Rabbi Gamliel for embarrassing Rabbi Yeshua, you know they should have made the Nasi. Who deserved it, no questions? Rabbi Akiva. That's the Gemara says.
But he didn't have Yichus.
Why didn't they give it to Rabbi Akiva? Because Rabbi Akiva didn't have Yichus. And they were pushed afraid from Rabbi Gamliel's Kpede. Rabbi Gamliel was a big tzaddik. They fired him. They demoted him. So the person who would take his place had to be able to deal with the Kpede. So they had to choose a Yuchas. That's what the Gemara says. It should have been Rabbi Akiva. They chose Rabbi Nazani. What was his Yichus? A seed of the Ezra. So I'm thinking. What do you have in the Haggadah Shel Pesach? Both. Of course, it's a puzzle. He's supposed to put the Torah next to the Mizbeach. The difference was that in Bayis Rishon.
When we have the bed by the he was chosen
before Shlomo Melech and after Shlomo Melech, during Shlomo Melech, of course, Sanhedrin, Yidden always had Torah. Sheftim v'sheitrim titan l'chavachal sharech. It's a pasuk in Chumash. That means Sanhedrin. That's what it means. Yidden always had Rabbonim and Rashi Yeshiva. Of course. But in Bayis Rishon, every generation Sanhedrin passed in halachas. They never said, what did the generation before say? This is what I think. Very simple. Every Sanhedrin passed in halachas. They never said, what's that thing is up for the year? Today, the whole halacha is built on what was said before. So that changes Ezra Sefer. Anyway, let's get back to Ezra. I think, I'm partially thinking now, Ezra Sefer was such an important man. He was such an important man. Perhaps, the reason we fast for the Histalkos of Ezra Sefer is because he didn't finish his last thing. He did so many things in his life. He had an incredibly successful life. Yeah. The last thing that Ezra Sefer wanted to do was to bring Yidden back from Bavel. The story of Bayesheni is a funny story. You know that. Bayesheni is a funny time. You know why? Because I don't think half the Jews live in Israel. Bayesheni had huge communities of Jews. In Africa and in Asia and maybe even some in Europe. Huge. Bavel had a gigantic community. Gigantic. The biggest yeshivas in the world were in Bavel from the Zman of Churban Bayis Rishon. Nardo and Sur and Pompadisa. Nardo was a Jewish city for over 1,000 years. The longest uninterrupted community of Jews is not Eretz Yisrael. It's Nardo. So many hundreds of years Yidden lived in the same place. No, Nardo is Bavel. It's Bavel. And there were Jews living in other parts. Ezra went to Bavel to bring Yidden back. Now again, I don't know. I'm making this up. I'm really making this up. If Ezra succeeds and he brings all of the Yidden that had gone to Bavel back, so then Eretz Yisrael is elevated to a higher level. Because one of the halachas of Eretz Yisrael is that there's a big difference if you're living in Eretz Yisrael, even if you have a Beis HaMikdash, and if you're living in Eretz Yisrael with a Beis HaMikdash, when Kol Yeshveha Aleha, when all the Jews live there. Because it's Pashat Nafkaminas in halacha. When you have Kol Yeshveha Aleha, then you can have Yovel, and you can have Evedivri, and you can have Dir Teishav, and you have Shmitas Ktafim Deirais. There's a whole bunch of dinim that only work when all the Yidden are living in the land. And Ezra went to get him, and he didn't bring him back. He stayed over there. I've heard that the Muslims honor Ezra. The Goyim, the Arabic, this is Persia. Baghdad is Iraq. Yeah, this is the city of Saddam Hussein. They honor him. Not Iran, Iraq. They honor Ezra Sefer. Had Ezra Sefer Matzliach would have brought Yidden back. He would have raised up the matzav of Eretz Yisrael to a higher madrega, and as they say in the real world, we never know what could have been. You know? Because one of the ideas that's associated with Kol Yeshveha Aleha, one of the ideas that's associated with all Yidden living in Eretz Yisrael is that there's a higher level of Amunah. So the way the Eibishter works is for everybody has a challenge. How big is your challenge? It depends how big your possibility is. For example, in Chutz La'aretz, Yidden live in America and other places, there's no chiyah that once in 7 years you have to rely on the Eibishter for your parnas. Every year you can go to work. And Eretz Yisrael, if you're a farmer, in Shnas HaShmita, you can't do anything. This inyan of Shmita, if you look in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, where it talks about what happens when you mevatel Shmita, you see that Shemitah is very, very important. Shemitah is not stam hazaya mitzvah. It's very, very important. The bittul of Shemitah is not keeping Shemitah causes that soul to be abandoned, to be forsaken. Why? Because the yesod of Shemitah is emunah. I trust that the Eibush is not mefanes. In Chutz La'aretz, a Yid cannot be expected to have that level of emunah because the level of Gilui Elokus is deficient. But in Eretz Yisrael, the level of Gilui Elokus is more. Right? According to Kabbalah, in Chutz La'aretz is Asiyah. That's why Gusham V'Aviram is Tameh. And Eretz Yisrael is like Elam HaYetzira. That's why you say that Eretz Yisrael, you live in Chutz La'aretz, Deimik Mishein Le'elakah. If you live outside of Eretz Yisrael, it's like you have no God and you're worshipping idols in purity. So it says in Vidak Damascus, it's a maimer from the Rebbe Nashab, and it's of course a classic maimer, and there's many maimorim. That you live in Chutz La'aretz, it's hard to see Hashgacha Pratis. Because it's hard to see Hashgacha Pratis, Emunah in the Eibush is much more challenging. In Eretz Yisrael B'chlal, it's a higher level. It's much easier to see the Hashgacha Hayin. Because you see the Eibush's hand more directly, the Eibush expects more Amunah. If all Yidden living in Eretz Yisrael, then there's even a higher level of Amunah. There's halachas of Yovel. And one of the halachas of Yovel are crazy. The halachas of Yovel say you buy real estate, it's not forever. You buy real estate, after 50 years it goes back to the original owner. You're buying real estate, you're making an investment. When it comes to Shnas HaChamishim, stay Achuza, goes back to the original owner. Right? You lend somebody money, comes Shnas HaShemitah, he doesn't have to pay you anymore. What kind of business nation is this? Jews? You give somebody money, and the Torah speaks specifically, Kol v'Shnas HaSheva, Shnas HaShemitah, v'ra'ah eincha b'achicha evyein, and that you're not going to want to give him, so the Pasuk says, no sanctity. It's not the beginning of the Shemitah, it's year 6.5, or whatever it is. And the guy comes and says, lend me money. And he's going to pay it back in such and such a time. And it's before Shemitah. If he doesn't pay it back and Shemitah comes, the loan is off, whether it's the beginning of the year, the end of the year. You know? How do you live like this? There's only one answer. The Eibush that provides. Is that easy? It's a gring. But when you have Kol Yeshua Allah, it brings with it an even higher madrega of a sense of the Eibush's presence. By bringing that higher sense of the Eibush's presence, that Eretz Yisrael, a Yid is able to, and therefore obligated to have mitzvahs on a higher madrega. So I'm thinking, this is what I'm thinking. It's almost like you could say that you're fasting on Asara BiTeves for Ezra's demise in a very similar way that you fast on Shem Gedalia for Gedalia's demise. I told you this in the beginning, that we fast Shem Gedalia. This is what I understand. This I researched. Shem Gedalia, I actually spent time learning about it, and I gave a class here many years ago. Many years ago, but I talked about Shem Gedalia. The fast of Gedalia is not only because Gedalia died. It's because when Gedalia died, the Yishuv left over. The Ruach HaKodesh went away, and it never came back on Vayishem. So perhaps Ezra's plan to bring the Yidden back from both of themselves. So you would have the body of Jews, Reiv Binyan, most of the Jews in the world living in Eretz Yisrael. When you have the most of the Jews in the world living in Eretz Yisrael, when you have the day of Kol Yeshua Allah, there's a lot of halachas, a lot of mitzvahs, which don't apply in Eretz Yisrael when there's not that case, which reflect a great revelation of the Eibishter's presence, which makes it possible for you to live in a higher level of Amunah, and therefore there's a higher standard of mitzvahs. In other words, you could say that had Ezra succeeded, he would have brought the Ruach HaKodesh back in some way. But he didn't succeed, he remained involved. So the Ruach HaKodesh was not brought back, so we fast. Now again, I'm not saying that this is true, I'm throwing out an idea, you understand? I've been obsessing over Ezra for days now. Why do we fast for Ezra Sefer? So of course the kids in Yeshiva right away brought up the whole idea of fasting on a yard site, and I mentioned to them that there's 3 shittas about this, right? In Shulchan Aruch it says that Yom Shemeis B'Yom V'Imei, Yom Shemeis B'Yirabi, you're supposed to fast. From a Yidden, Ehrlich Yidden, on the yard site of a father and a mother, as well as of a rabbi moving, they fast. I think they did. That's the Shulchan Aruch. By the Chassidit Pa'ul, a yard site has gone a Hilula. A yard site is a Yom Tif. Why? The Neshama is an Aliyah, got some Ezra with the Stalkos. We learned about it yesterday in the Sikha class that we were learning. Yeah. What about Chabad? So the Rebbe said by Fabring that I asked the Frierdiker Rebbe, but the Rebbe said by Fabring in the early years, I asked the Frierdiker Rebbe why we don't fast on the Yartzeit, why we say Tachnan on the Yartzeit. The Rebbe said the Frierdiker Rebbe, we should do like the Peinisha. When you have a Yartzeit of a Tzaddik, it should be a Yom Hilula, Yom Simcha. You shouldn't say Tachnan because the Aliyah of the Neshama, and then it's Meir Eid and Kol Ha'olam is Kulam and including in this world. So it's an Eis Ratzon, it's a Yom Segula, it's a time of goodness. So the Frierdiker Rebbe's response was, when then is da a better Tzaddik Zogin Tachnan? When is there a better time to say Tachnan than the Yartzeit of a Tzaddik? Not because it's a sad day, but Taka because it's an Eis Ratzon. Taka because it's a Yom Segula. You understand? So we don't fast on Yartzeit of Tzaddikim. We hold. So the Rebbe says, Lashon, we're in the middle. We're not the extreme who fasts. We're not the extreme who doesn't say Tachnan. We don't fast, but we say Tachnan because we appreciate both sides. The Yartzeit of a Tzaddik is a Hilula, it's a Simcha. Tzad Hasheni, it's a Eis Ratzon for Tshuva, and the Halacha is you're supposed to fast. So we don't fast, but we say Tachnan. When it comes to Ezra Sefer, we fast. We fast in the Yartzeit, or in conjunction with the Yartzeit of Ezra Sefer. Why? Why? In other words, how is that in concert with the idea that the Yartzeit of a Tzaddik is a Hilula, and a Yom Tiv, and a Simcha, and so on? The only answer is because Ezra Sefer's passing is not about Ezra Sefer. It's about what didn't happen as a result of the fact that Ezra Sefer passed. In other words, Vitad, Ezra Sefer himself, his Histalkus is an Aliyah and Alagut Zach, and I'm sure Ezra Sefer is not particularly thrilled that he's buried in Chutz Laretz. And it's like a story with Rachel. The one who pays the highest price gets the most. Ezra Sefer did so much for the Jewish people. He's not entitled to be buried in that shul. Of all people, he's not entitled. Moshe Rabbeinu is in Chutz Laretz. Rachel is a Maderech, and Ezra Sefer is in Baghdad. You understand? The Eibishter runs the world, and he knows best. This is what he decides. And very fortunately for all of us, he doesn't consult us. I'm sure, the Rebbe always says that by a tzaddik nothing happens negative. Ezra Sefer had to agree to be placed in the place. Just like Rachel Imeinu agreed to be placed on Leima Derech, just like Moshe Rabbeinu had to agree to be buried on Har Nevoi, so Ezra Sefer had to agree to be buried in Baghdad. But we're fasting. So again, the only reason you can explain a fast is because you're not fasting about the etzem that Ezra Sefer passed away. You're fasting about the things that Ezra Sefer, to say it in Yiddish, that he didn't finish doing, that he would have accomplished had he continued living. And again, the thing that's known is he wanted to bring Yidden back to Eretz Yisrael. So you got a different version of Asara BiTeves. This is not what you know. When you come to a shir in Asara BiTeves, I'm all sheared out. I mean, I repeated to you all the sikhs that we learned about the Asara BiTeves being the first of the Dalet Temes, and there's the famous Abud Raham. The Abud Raham says that if Asara BiTeves is on Shabbos, we actually fast. Asara BiTeves can't be on Shabbos, but it could be on Friday. It could be on Friday. And when it falls on Friday, we misanim or mashlimim. You come into Shabbos hungry, which is normally not allowed. You finish the fast. Tisha B'Av, Shabbos B'Tammuz, and Tzem Gedalia, they could be on Shabbos. And when they're in Shabbos, you push them to Sunday. Titus Esther could also be Shabbos, so by Titus Esther you push back to Thursday because to put it. Asara BiTeves can't be Shabbos, but it says in Abudra that since by Asara BiTeves you have the Lashon Be'etzem HaYom Hazeh, and by Yom HaKippurim you have the Lashon Be'etzem HaYom Hazeh also. So he said you make a Gzei Shava, it's a Hekish. Be'etzem HaYom Hazeh, Be'etzem HaYom Hazeh, just like in Yom Kippur, you fast even when it's Shabbos. He writes Asara BiTeves fast also when it's Shabbos. Why? This is the Rebbe Sichas now. Why? Because it's the beginning of the Puranis, it's the beginning of the tragedy, and the beginning is always considered the most severe. That's one idea that Rebbe spoke many times. Another idea that Rebbe spoke many times, the idea of Samach, I remember Rebbe saying it, Samach Melech Bavel Al Yerushalayim, the king of Babylon laid a siege to Jerusalem. But the Hebrew word is not that he uses, not Motzed, but Samach. Motzed means he made a siege. Samach means he stood next to. But like you say, Soymech Neuflim, Samach doesn't only mean to stand near, it means to hold up. Had the Rebbe getayt, Samach Melech Bavel Al Yerushalayim, Nebuchadnezzar came to destroy the first Beis HaMikdash. And unwittingly, he was Samach Melech, he supported the Inyan of Yerushalayim. That's what the Rebbe spun it. Samach Melech Bavel. through Melech Bavel, there was a smicha, there was a support for the Indian Shalom. There's, of course, a lot of different ways of explaining it, but...
How we did it? How was Samach?
Oh, there's a lot of answers to that question. One of them is that it could have been Samach Melech Bavel Shalom and Yidden Datshuva, and the other one is we say that the Churban Abayis is the moment of maximum love. We are still here because Shafach Apayal Yitzim Lavonim. So he comes to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, but in destroying the Beis HaMikdash, he's preserving the Jewish people. So the standard of Asara BiTeves speeches I gave you already. I'm out of speeches. Yeah, and then of course the speech, Kala speech of the Makar Kala. When you talk about a Teves, you have to bring the Rambam that never brings, where the Rambam writes that a fast is an Ezra, which is why when Mashiach comes, the fast are not abolished. The fast are made into Yom Tov because you made Ataynos Ezra. And the reason we fast is because it's a time for tshuva. When a person's fasting, nichna levave, he feels hungry, he feels vulnerable, and his heart is subdued. And because his heart is subdued, he's more open to hearing divrei asederas, divrei tshuva, divrei vushin, as the Rebbe calls it. So this is what we fast. So fast on Yemei Tshuva, the infant fast days of Yemei Tshuva. But we have a different angle today. We talked about Ezra Sefer. Okay, there's only one thing that never changes from all of our talks, and that is that we have Geisa Geshrei at Mosai. We'll have Ezra Sefer also, along with all the other tzaddikim, Tevim Gedalim. Okay, thank you all for coming. Good morning, and for those who are fasting, Agrin and Tonis.